What's up? And welcome to the show. It's our first ever show. So pat yourself on the back for being a part of the history. So this show's all about origin stories. We go one-on-one with some of the biggest names in action sports. We want to hear about the roots, from their beginnings to what got them here today, and hopefully some funny stories along the way. We kick things off with a huge first guest, the purveyor of cool, the most innovative snowboarder on the planet. From growing up in Highland, Michigan, to winning a couple of gold medals at X Games Aspen, he is Danny Davis. Danny Davis, thank you for joining us today, brother. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Where in the world are you right now?
Man, it's rare you caught me at home.
Okay, in Truckee, California?
Truckee, California in the Sierra Mountains.
Okay, how does Danny Davis start his morning on a day like today?
Well, we've got some light winds coming from the southwest, so that means it's going to be a coffee morning. We're gonna brew up some coffee, and we're gonna start our day since it's 6:40 a.m. here. And we're gonna get the boots on the dryer because I probably forgot to put them on the dryer yesterday. So we're gonna get ready to go snowboarding.
I love it.
And we've got a nice, fresh 1 to 2 feet this weekend. So the conditions out in the mountains are pretty prime time right now.
Well, before we go any further, I think we have to talk about the elephant in the room here. I had seen a photo circulating of you with no hair. It looks like it's grown out since then. Part of the Danny Davis mystique is those long locks. What the heck happened to the hair, man?
Well, it was a camping, something that happens when I go camping with long hair. It just turns into a dreaded rat's nest.
A nest. Something was
And
growing.
after 20 days of camping, the rat's nest became untangleable. So out came the buzzers.
So it was a form of function. It wasn't just, I'm over it. You actually... Yeah.
It had been 11, 12 years since scissors had seen this hair.
Wow.
And so it was sort of a multi-purpose. I was definitely over it a little bit.
Who do you trust with a job like that? Now, you haven't been in 11 or 12 years, so methinks you don't have, a barber or stylist on standby.
Exactly.
Who gets the privilege of cutting Danny Davis's hair after 12 plus years?
Well, it was a young, about 73-year-old war veteran in Anchorage, Alaska. And he was the lucky barber.
He got the Wonka golden ticket.
To him, I said to him, hey, man, I had a big beard too.
Yeah.
I was like, can you just take it all away? And he looked at me and he said, well, what do you want, a number 1 or a number 2? I said, let's go with the number 2. Number 1 sounds
I like that he gave
really
you
cool.
options. So you just said, hey, everything that's hair, get rid of it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
yeah, and I told him to leave the mustache, and he loved that.
I bet he did. Well, you look fantastic.
And within seconds, it was all on the floor.
Well,
and I was just like, whoa.
You look good, man.
Hey, thanks.
Well, Danny, I can't thank you enough for joining this show. As we said off the top, this is our first ever one, and I said, we got to swing for the fences here. We got to get a heavy hitter. And I don't just mean that in snowboarding, I also mean that on the slow pitch softball field, because we do know that you go yard with a bat in your hand. We'll save that story for a little bit later, but I want to go day one with you, Danny, because I've known you for a long time, but we really haven't talked about where you came from. Highland, Michigan. Correct me if I'm wrong, geography-wise. Is that like a suburb of Detroit? Where is that in the landscape of Michigan, where you grew up?
Yeah, so Highland Falls, about 45 minutes north of Detroit. You've got the mitten here.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can't tell if how I'm mirrored or what I should do.
That's your
But
back of hand. Got it.
if you've got the thumb of Michigan, Detroit falls somewhere in here, and Highland falls somewhere just above up in this area. We do lots of snowboarding up in here and here. And then you got the UP like up here. But I'm way down here.
So what was your home mountain? Where'd you grow up riding?
Alpine Valley is the name of my home mountain. It is 306 feet vertical.
Wow.
And if we were to continue to add to the trash pile or the old gravel pit that it is, we might gain a few inches, but it's not getting any taller.
Okay, so Highland, Midwestern town, just kind of good stand-up, Michigan nice type people.
You said it, man. There's a lot of car industry there. I kind of live in a rural area. It's not, a city by any means. There's lots of horse farms and lots of space, and we're just only an hour outside the city. But it's a great place, and it was a great place to grow up. Tons of lakes, lots of fishing. Hunting. I didn't grow up hunting, but a lot of my friends did. It's kind of a little rednecky, if I'm being honest.
Was it snowboarding day one for you? Did you start skiing? How did it work for you?
Yeah, well, I would say I probably started with a Kmart style snowboard. It was like this thick. And it had some weird plastic bindings on it that were fixed in one stance. And then, we got real boards later on, but I was probably 6 or 7 years old when we had gotten those for our Christmas presents, me and my brother.
Your brother's older, your brother's older or younger? Younger or older brother?
Older, 4 years older.
Got it.
So anything he did, I did.
Got it.
But it didn't start with snowboarding. That was like more of a later, my dad wanted to learn to snowboard. We wanted to start going to the mountain because in the winter, you've got a lot of cold in Michigan, but you got no mountains. But to spend time outside, you kind of need to be snowboarding or playing pond hockey.
Got it.
And pond hockey wasn't my thing.
You weren't into it.
So snowboarding came into the picture once my dad wanted to learn to snowboard.
Were you skating at that point? When it wasn't winter. Did you skate growing up as a kid?
Gosh, this is always a tough one for me. But there was a time when I was a young rollerblader, and that may have fallen in that time.
Wow. Okay.
But then my brother didn't let that last very long.
Aggressive inline.
I threw some backflips and stuff.
Really?
I was an okay little rollerblader, but then my brother kind of threw down the hammer and was like, "Hey, man, you're more than welcome to come hang out with me and my friends and come skating, but you should really probably think about getting on a skateboard."
Okay, so your brother checked you at an age and
he
just said,
checked
"Hey,
me.
let's. I'm not saying you can't do this, but
Yes.
I got this thing over here that you might be interested in. Listen to me. Put those away."
I think he was more like, "Look, I'm not saying that you can't be cool and be a rollerblader, but it'd be a lot cooler if you skateboarded."
Wow. Okay. Okay. So the theme I'm getting though is older brother. You're definitely looking up to him. You guys are doing things together. Needless to say, I'm assuming that friendship kind of grew up as you guys grew up together.
Definitely. I mean, Mickey was, any older brother in the situation, he becomes your idol.
Yeah.
And whatever he did, I wanted to do. And he wasn't the normal older brother. He was like, "Come hang out with us." My mom was always like, "You got to bring your little brother." And he never had a problem with it. always brought me skateboarding, even when his friends were kind of like, you bringing Danny again? He's like, yeah, Danny's coming.
Super inclusive.
And he wasn't the kind of brother who was throwing noogies and beating me up. He was more like, come hang.
Oh, that's cool. And then
Yeah.
I would find out, fast forward, and I don't know if he grew up doing this, but Mickey, your older brother, is an accomplished opera singer, right?
He is. He's a vocal major. He started singing in bands. We went to church as young kids. He used to sing in the church choir. Him and my mother both were very into music. My mom still is. He still is. I still am. Music was a huge part of our family. And he kind of stole all the genes, though. He kind of got all the voice, the I can play any instrument vibes. He took all that. So I'm just left with a good ear.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then before we go any further too, unlike, a lot of snowboarders, you traditionally played some stick and ball sports. Like, I know you played baseball all throughout your teenage and even like high school years, right?
Yeah, in our household, if you weren't playing a sport every season, something was wrong, or mom and dad were kind of like, whoa.
Yeah, I kind of grew up that way too.
It's fall, you're playing football. Okay, now it's winter, you're signing up for basketball. Cool, we're into spring, time to get into baseball. And then summer and would roll around and baseball would continue, but then we'd start playing golf on the golf team.
Oh. Wait, Danny Davis was on the golf? You were on the golf team?
Golf team, man. Grandparents got us started young on golf, like 4 years old. I think I started swinging a golf club.
Wow.
And I'll be honest, it's one of the things that I have to thank my grandparents for, because golfing at a young age and getting a swing has been something that later in life is like, hey, do you golf? And I'm like, yeah, I golf. I'm very unassuming. And then people are like, hey, you got a really nice swing.
Yeah.
And then I got to tell them the story, Grandma and Grandpa got us started young at Twin Beach Country Club. And
Twin Beach
and then
CC.
High school came, and golf was a rad sport to be a part of.
Okay, so you're playing all the traditional sports. You're trying to get up to your local mountains when you can during winter. Fast forward for me,
Yep.
When is it that you're starting to really gravitate more towards snowboarding and that talent is starting to present itself for you?
I was probably 12, and my home mountain had a tow rope, and I would go there every day and ride from whenever my homework was done, because my mom's rule was, got to get the homework done and then you can go snowboarding. And in Michigan, you can ride from like 9 a.m. until midnight. So I would get off school, go home, do my homework, go to basketball practice, whatever was happening that time of year. And then I would go straight to the mountain till my mom had some time to pick me up. And I had a pager then.
Whoa.
Because my mom would come to the mountain and it was time to pick me up and she would page me. And then I would come down to the car. And probably around 12 was when I started to I could do a backflip, I remember. And it was like, kids at my home mountain were like, whoa, Danny can do a backflip, man. He's getting really good.
Did you have was there a park, or was this just off of just some kickers? Yeah.
Alpine Valley was kind of, I would say, one of the better park riding places in Michigan. There was Pine Knob, Alpine Valley, and Mount Brighton were all near me. And Alpine kind of seemed to have one of the better terrain parks. They had a half pipe.
Oh, they
that
did?
Probably got, yeah, and it got probably cut like once a month, if that. So we would build highway hits. It was a pretty old school looking half pipe.
Did you know
So
at
we
that when
had
you
that
were?
on the right side of the tow rope,
Yeah.
and then we had the jump and eventually some rails on the left side of the tow rope. And you just could burn like hundreds of laps a day.
Wow. Even at
Yeah, it
that
was
young
great. And
age
that's
with that pipe, like, did you gravitate toward that at all? Like, hey, this is, I actually am like, of everything I'm doing here, I'm finding my most joy in this pipe.
You know, no, not at that time. It was what was there, though. So that is what I wrote a lot, and maybe the half pipe skills are what I gathered quicker.
Yeah.
But slopestyle was really like, to me, the cool thing. Like Peter Line, J.P.
Oh, for
Walker.
sure.
I had the Forum movie, The
Oh
Resistance.
my
Was one
gosh.
of the
It's one of
first
my
movies I
favorites.
had.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was
Oh, that era.
watching those
Yeah.
guys. There wasn't a ton of half pipe in it.
Correct. Right.
So I really liked the jumps, and I really liked the backcountry kind of side of it, but we didn't have that in Michigan.
I'm picturing you going to basketball practice, then getting over to the mountain, and then looking like a total G with your pager as you're
A total
finishing
G.
your.
I think I was wearing like a weird helmet with a bright green jacket, and I would wear my hood like super tight over everything with some goggles. So it kind of looked something like this,
Yeah, but what
you
kid,
know,
what
without the
12-year-old kid
beard.
is rolling around with a pager? There's only two types of people I know that have a
Well,
pager, and this is a third tier that I didn't know about. A
it was
middle
my
school
it
kid
was
with
my mother's pager, and she would just give it to me when I left, and then she had a car phone because she
sweet.
was a real estate agent,
Got
so
it.
she
Yeah,
had to
yeah,
have the
yeah,
car phone.
yeah. Always
So
be
my
closing.
mom would,
Business never sleeps.
you know,
Car phone,
it's business
pager.
never sleeps. You know, if somebody needs to buy a house at 2 a.m.,
Your mom's
you
got
got
a
to make
phone.
that sale. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So now we're talking 12. You're starting to do a little. You're at the mountain a ton. You're riding pipe. You're doing backflips. How do you get to? You eventually end up at Stratton Mountain School, which has produced so many famous riders and some of your
Legend.
best friends, right?
Yeah.
So how do you get from basically riding Alpine in Michigan and getting enough shine to where, hey, I think Danny needs to get to SMS? How did that work?
So probably around 13 or 14, I started doing USASA and still is, competitions around the country,
Right.
regional contests. So we were in the Michigan series, which I think was called the Mitten. I don't know. You have the Green Mountain series in Vermont. You have the New England series, and above that, and I can't remember what Michigan was called, but we had our own USASA series, and I started to do well. I started to win some of those, and I made it to nationals. Go to nationals, I do okay. I meet other kids, and we start to learn that some of these kids are going to these snowboard schools, and that's how they're getting so good. And that started to become a dream of mine. Like, hey, mom and dad, look at Louis Vito. He's going to this snowboard school, and he travels to contests all year, and he's getting better. And my parents were like, wow, that's great, but that's probably never going to happen for you. I was like, okay, cool, right on. They were like, it's just a little bit
Good
expensive,
talk.
kind of outside of our
Right.
comfort zone a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, I'll keep just going to public school, and I'll keep missing 40 plus days of school, and we'll see what happens. So I continued to do contests, and we got to a point where I was 14, 15, and my public school wouldn't let me advance to the next grade, even though I had good grades. They were like, you've missed 45 days of school, so therefore you have to be held back. You can't finish 10th grade.
Whoa.
So then my mom was like, well, that's BS. This kid's got good grades, and we don't have the time to homeschool him, so we got to look for a different avenue so that this kid can get an education and follow his dreams of being a professional snowboarder. So what was once sort of a dream of going to a snowboard school was now like a necessity for my parents if they wanted me to finish a high school degree. So I went to SMS, and that came about by Ross Powers and SMS giving me this scholarship that made it possible for my parents to send me to snowboard school.
You mentioned Ross Powers. What was your relationship at that point with Ross?
I didn't know him at all. And at the moment, Ross Powers Foundation only helped out Vermonters.
Oh, wow.
So it was a little bit of like him going out on a limb and doing something different for a kid from Michigan and offering some funding to him to reach his snowboard dreams.
So you broached this idea of going to some place like Stratton Mountain School initially. Your parents say, nah, I don't know. I don't think so, Danny. This is a little outside of the box. Then all of a sudden, tardiness is going to, it's not, hey, Danny might, if he doesn't get his act together, he might not, move on. It's basically your school was saying, you're not going to 10th grade. You will be held back. So now you're, okay, this is what we're going to do. Obviously in the industry, we know about a place like Stratton Mountain School and its reputation, but for maybe those watching who don't fully understand like what a place like this is, like describe exactly what Stratton Mountain School is.
Yeah, it sounds weird, right? Like I went to snowboard school. I don't mean that I got dropped off on Saturday and went for 4 hours with my coach, Billy, and he took us down all the classic runs at Stratton.
Yeah.
Snowboard school for us at Stratton Stratton Mountain School is a boarding school, and I don't mean snowboarding school. I mean a school where you live there. And skiers and snowboarders go. There's alpine skiers, there's Nordic skiers, there's every kind of side of alpine skiing competitively. And that's a majority of the school. There's probably 150 to maybe 200 skiers, and the snowboard team was like 20 to 30 snowboarders. So we were the minority at the school, but we would go to school in the evenings and snowboard in the mornings. So from maybe 8:30 to 9 a.m. we went till noon snowboarding. And then we would go back to school, have lunch, and class would start at like 1 p.m. or so. And then you'd go till like 6 p.m.
Was that, I mean, I have to imagine that's just like heaven on earth for a kid who's just like eating, sleeping, breathing, snowboarding, right? From day one, that was just like, this is incredible.
Yeah, it's like I wasn't even going, like at that point, once my parents were like, all right, we're going to make it happen. We're going to go a little bit beyond our means and send you to a boarding school, which I don't think my parents ever thought they would do. And all of a sudden I was living in a dorm room with a guy named Mike Farnham. And he scared the crap out of me at first. He was a big guy. And I had some freedom. And I was sort of on my own path and checking in with my parents, weekly, daily on some occasions. And I was so excited. Like I wasn't even going to school.
Right.
School was like no problem. It was like, hey, are you doing your homework? Like, yeah, for sure. But like, I'm also snowboarding like 5 hours a day. So who cares?
So when you got there, obviously you mentioned Louis, who had been going to that school, Louis Vito. Needless to say, I imagine there were other guys that maybe you had competed against in some of these contests that were there, that maybe you had, that you had known, so you weren't necessarily coming in blindly. Who else? Name some of the other guys who were there, maybe that you knew or that you were friends with when you got there.
Yeah, I was the new guy for sure. I was the kid from Michigan who had really bad style.
Wow.
A little bit of talent. and didn't know anybody. And when I showed up to Stratton Mountain School, Jack and Luke Matrani were some of the first people I met. And they weren't going to go to Stratton Mountain School anymore. They had been going for a couple years, but they were going to take their snowboarding to the next level. And they were just going to move to Mammoth Lakes, California, and ride the best snowboard park around.
Yep.
And they were going to do homeschool. And so they left like in the fall, and I didn't hang out with Jack and Luke anymore. And Kevin Pierce moved out with them too.
So when
So
you
they were
got
going
there,
to
that
SMS.
circle was there, but like literally as soon as
Yeah.
you got there, they basically went west.
Exactly. They
Got
were
it.
like a step ahead of me.
Yeah.
And Mason Aguirre never went to SMS, but he was moving out to Mammoth Lakes. But the people that we had, the circle that we had at SMS was riders like myself, Louis Vito, Alex Diebold, who's a Olympic medalist in border cross.
Yep.
We had a guy by the name of Mike Goldschmidt, who is easily the most impressive snowboarder at SMS in my time. And he was he competed competitively for a long time. Now he's a snowboard coach at one of the other mountain schools. There was tons of riders though. Nick Russell, who is a big mountain rider now, and my roommate, he went to school there. There's just and great skiers too. There's a girl named Sophie Caldwell who was a Nordic skier while I was going there. She goes to the Olympics now. The school produces a ton of high caliber winter athletes.
She might have been before you because I know she's a little older than us. But didn't Lindsay
Yep.
Jacobellis went there, didn't she?
Yeah, Lindsay was just ahead of me. I didn't go to school with her.
Yeah.
She graduated maybe the year I got there, or the year before I got there.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so now you're.
And I know like Ross Powers went there.
Yeah.
Danny Cass tried to go there, got denied entry. He was a little bit maybe too much of a bad boy. I don't know.
So it's not
But
just
a ton of
it's not
snowboarders
just
there.
Danny. So it's not just about the means, right? Like a rich kid can't just roll up. Like it's almost like you have to be sort of designated as like this guy or gal has potential to be good, or can
Yeah.
anyone kind of sign up for
I
this
think
if
to
they
a
got the
certain
tuition?
degree. I think if you really want to go there and your parents have the means, you can make it happen. Because it's a great school academically too.
Right.
And that's what a lot of kids are going there, not because they want to be a professional skier or a snowboarder. They just love skiing and snowboarding. And they're going to go to a boarding school somewhere on the East Coast. And so their parents, I'm sure, are like, well, what kind of school do you want to go to? And they're like, well, I love skiing, so let me go do school and be a skier.
So at this
Or
point,
snowboarder.
did you was the mindset, I want to be a pro snowboarder?
It was a dream, but I think it was so far away. And I wasn't in that world at all that I didn't really understand how you got to that level.
Right.
Because in my mind, I see these movies like Technical Difficulties and The Resistance, and these guys are all filming, and these are the professional snowboarders. How do I do that? I don't have backcountry around me. I don't have I didn't know how to get there, and competition snowboarding seemed like the way for me to like maybe sneak into the industry and get a little noticed, maybe get a sponsor. Who knows?
Got it. So at that point, I'm trying to think of that era. I mean, X Games had come out, right? The X Games was going on at that point. I don't know if it had reached Aspen yet,
Yep.
but you'd probably seen Winter X Games at that point, right?
Oh yeah, we had watched it for years. I mean, before I was before I was into snowboarding, we were watching it. We were watching like Ben Hinckley do front flips on the big air and stuff like that.
Did somebody walk in, Danny? I feel like I'm losing your attention.
You know, we got this. Let me show you this little freak right here that wants to get outside. Jerry.
Oh.
Jerry.
This is Jerry?
What's up, freak? Let me let this beast out real quick. Hang
Please,
on.
no. Walk and talk.
Get out of here, buddy.
What a patient. So he's been in there the whole
We've
time?
got another creature right here.
And who's this one?
This is Layla.
Oh, Jerry and Layla.
And as you can see, Layla's very sleepy. She's about 15 years old. She's an old girl.
She doesn't look like she's moving today. I'm gonna be honest with you, Danny.
She is probably here for the next 3 hours. She's a big girl. She doesn't move very quickly.
Do the dogs sleep on the bed? That's the question.
You know, when my girlfriend's not home, I like to have my little crew.
Daddy's treats. Okay, so at that point, you're at Stratton Mountain School. You're loving life. You're not even sure the idea of like what you're gonna do with this, but this is just you're recognizing that this is a rad opportunity, and you're enjoying that in the moment.
Oh yeah, I'm like loving life.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're going to contests here and there, Vans Triple Crowns, Grand Prix, back in the day when Vans Triple Crowns were
Triple
around.
Crown, that's right.
Grand Prix, and then the US Open was like our coveted event because it was in Stratton, Vermont, where we went to school. And you got special treatment if you were in the contest. Like they let you skip school that week.
For like the junior jam?
I never did the junior jam. I went straight into the normal event.
The big dogs. Wow.
The
Okay.
big dogs.
Okay.
I did horrible the first time I did it.
Really?
Yeah, and the Misfits were playing on Friday night, and the qualifying started on Monday. Back in the day, you had pre-qualifiers, qualifiers.
Wow.
Then you could get into the contest. Then you had semifinals.
Semis, then that's right.
Finals.
Yeah.
So by Friday, I didn't make the cut, and my parents were like, well, it's time to go back to Michigan. This was before I went to SMS. So once I was at the school and we had US Open happening, it was the coolest thing ever because everybody at school was just like, how'd you do? How did Danny do? And then you'd go back to your room. They'd be like, oh man, I had to go to school all day. You got to snowboard all day.
That's interesting. So the US Open pre you going to Stratton Mountain School was kind of like the barometer of like where you're going to go with this and what your parents were like sort of willing to do for you, depending on like how you finish there. Interesting.
It was sort of a caliber too of like how good you were, not only for your age, but how good you were in the grand scheme of snowboarding.
Right.
Which, for me at the time was like looking at guys like Ross Powers, Keir Dillon, Danny Cass, and I'm comparing myself to them. So it was sort of this proving ground for competitive snowboarding in my mind.
Who was your first, and at what time are you getting your first sponsor? And who is it, and when does that happen?
Well, so here's a good story. I was probably 14 or 15 years old, maybe 13 or 14. And I loved Burton, and I really wanted to be riding their boards. And my dad went to a wedding, and there was a guy from Burton who worked there. And my dad just brought my Sponsor Me tape to this wedding, and he knew this guy that worked at Burton would be there.
What?
And I don't know how it happened. Maybe my dad was cutting it up on the dance floor, spinning my mom around, and then, dancing with somebody else, and then all of a sudden ran into this guy, was like, hey, here's my son's Sponsor Me tape. I don't know how it went down.
I didn't know you would be here. I was totally unprepared. So he pulls his tape out like he had a jazz flute in his sleeve.
Soda. Here's
your sponsor. So your dad brought your Sponsor Me tape to a wedding, and he hands it over to a Burton employee.
Yeah. Yep. And they probably more or less put it in the trash.
Yeah.
But what they did do was reached out to the distributor or the rep in Michigan, who was Mike Cox at the time. Great guy. And he started hooking me up with boards. and I wasn't paid, and I was probably buying the boards like at Proform or something.
Mm-hmm.
But in my eyes, I was now sponsored by Burton because the representative in Michigan gave me stickers and maybe a snowboard.
Okay, so that was.
But I didn't sign my first contract till my last year of high school.
Wow. Okay, so so let's fast forward now. Stratton Mountain School. Now you're in your last year. Now you're really starting to make some noise. I assume the contest results are starting to like roll in your favor at that point.
They're getting better. I was starting to at least just like get noticed. Like, hey, there's this young kid who's making finals here and there. I think my last year of high school, I got rookie of the U.S. Open.
Oh, nice.
So I won a snowmobile, which was like, whoa.
Next level, yeah.
Should I sell this thing? Should I keep this thing? I kept it. Later on, it caught on fire and burned to the ground. But, we'll tell that story later. But
hold on, what?
So at that time, I was doing well in contests, but more just like I was a young kid who was riding well.
Yeah.
You were going up against guys like Shaun White, Danny Cass, Ross Powers, Andy Finch. And if you could do well amongst those guys, I guess you were decent.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I started going on a lot of trips with Burton. Once I started to do well in contests, then Burton started to take me on photo shoots. We went to New Zealand that summer and shot for like a month, just riding park features and shooting all their new stuff that was about to come out the year before. So now it felt like all of a sudden, whoa, I'm on the Burton team. Like contests and doing well in contests almost didn't even matter because I was traveling the world and living my dream.
Yeah, how surreal for like a 16, 17-year-old kid to, from Michigan, as you said, who wasn't even sure what the future held for you as far as snowboarding long-term was concerned. And next thing you know, you're on the most epic team going on trips. And now you're with these guys on this heritage brand. That's got to be so unbelievable. You mentioned something that still kind of blows my mind, just knowing who you are and your place in snowboarding, certainly now, and that is just ushering in this generation of style matters. And so when you say, you came to Stratton Mountain School with no style or bad style and a little talent, that like baffles me a little bit. I'm sure you're being somewhat humble, but I have to imagine during your time there, something must have clicked or triggered for Burton to kind of see you and beyond just the idea of like, let's project what he'll do contest-wise. The style had to have been clear to them that you're bringing something to the table even at a young age.
I honestly, like, I would love to say, like, you either have style or you don't. But I didn't. I really didn't. I think I had some talent, but I really just got tricks done for a while there. Like, if I was learning a cab 7, I would just huck myself and do a backflip and somehow get to regular and grab wherever it worked on my board. And Mason Aguirre was probably the first person who was honest with me and was like, yo, that's really whack looking. And he was one of the most, like, the stylish young, most stylish young rider. So that coming from him was a big thing, a big eye opener to me. Like, hey, it's not just about getting this front 7, cab 7 combo. It's about doing something that looks better than the next guy's front 7 to cab 7 combo. And yes, at one point we were doing front 7, cab 7 and doing well in contests. That was the thing at one point. But style was something that I had to learn. I had to watch. I had to watch Danny Cass. I had to watch Lane Kanak, Kyle Clancy, Ross Powers. I had to make my own style from watching all my favorite riders. It wasn't something I was born with.
Interesting. So you officially sign your deal with Burton. You said your last year in high school. Now you're traveling the world. You're doing these shoots. Mason has this heart-to-heart with you, like, yo, let's
Heart to
talk.
heart is maybe a little. He was more just like, yo, dude, that's pretty.
Yeah. Okay, so he shot you straight. So now all of a sudden you're doing contests. You're filming. I had read, and I think they even did a story on it about it when you were sort of a rookie. So probably in that same era. ESPN, the magazine, did it, gosh, probably 10, 11 years ago, about how you, at that time, traveled. Is this true? You traveled with a sewing machine when you were on the road?
So I'll start a little further back just to make this a little longer. My mother, when I was young, taught me to knit a scarf for a girlfriend that I was dating, and she was like, "This will be rad. You won't have to buy anything, and you're gonna make something. You're gonna really put your heart into something for this girl." And
It's
she
as
taught me to
romantic
knit.
as it is sustainable, Danny.
Exactly.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
My mom was probably more just like, I don't want to give my son $15 to buy some crap for his girlfriend, so I'm gonna.
So
make
you
him
learned
work
how to
for it.
knit. You crocheted what was it? A beanie, a mittens for a girl?
I knitted a scarf,
got
for
it. Okay.
a girl, and I worked really hard on it. At one point, I remember I came home and my mom had unraveled a bunch of it because she was like, "You got kind of sloppy. You need to tighten it up here." And I thought I had finished the project, and my mom unraveled it all and was like, "Start back over." So once she taught me that, then I started to crochet, and that's how I made money to go to things like nationals and Vans Triple Crowns. And when I say that's how I made some money to travel, I mean that I sold some hats to the local snowboard shop and maybe made $100. But my mom was trying to instill some, hey, you need to work for these plane tickets a little bit. You need to create some means of making money if you're going to spend all this money. So she taught me that, and I really enjoyed making hats and scarves and things. And then once I got to travel and stuff, I got into sewing things on my clothes. I would sew tie-dye patches or whatever, some flannel patch over some hole. And I started traveling with a sewing machine and making stuff for Mason and Kev and some of the other guys I was hanging with. And I would travel with a sewing machine in the bag. And
was this a carry-on, or did you gotta check that thing? How's that work? Actually, literally, logistically, what do you do with the sewing machine? What's in the bag, sir? Wow, that's fascinating.
You pack your clothes all around it, so no matter how the luggage guy throws it, it sort of gets
right. Okay, so you actually, you kind of enjoy doing this. Okay, so this kind of harkens back to what we were talking about with the style. So as you're just, we talk about just landing tricks to land tricks, but from a, just a look perspective from clothing, you always sort of had a high eye on doing things custom, making things yours, yes?
Yeah, I think I liked being a little bit different. I think always when I was younger, I don't think I was always stylish. I mean, I wore a lot of sweatpants in middle school, and it really bummed my mom out. She actually made a rule that I could only wear sweatpants 3 times a day going to middle school. Or 3 times a week, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't think you were having that many daily outfit changes.
But I used to wear hospital pants. We kind of had some weird styles as young skateboarding kids.
Okay, but stylish, of course, is subjective. But at the end of the day, you wanted something at least that sounds like that was yours. And where I'm going with that,
and just something different and something that I kind of put my own thing on. I don't know. I don't even know why I did it.
But it leads me to this next question, and that is, Burton has obviously always been an integral brand for you since day one, and then you sign, and obviously, knowing Jake Burton a little bit that I do, and obviously you've been so close to him. I would think from most brands' perspective, when a sponsored rider is sort of attaching things to their clothes that they're giving to you to showcase, I would assume a lot of brands would say, yo, like, maybe don't do this. But knowing Jake a little bit, it seems like that's something that he would revel in and actually love the fact that you were doing that, right?
I think Jake probably loved it. I think people at the brand were like, this kid's altering the clothes to look different, and we're trying to get him to wear them so he can promote the product. And now all these people are looking for this jacket with this patch on it or
Right.
whatever. And I think they were kind of like, well, whatever. He's not our top tier rider, so who cares? This kid's having fun. Let him do his thing.
So take me now to your very first pro comp season. Like, let's talk about that first X Games. You remember it?
First X Games. Whew. Trying to remember. Well, I will say the first year that I did really well was my first year. I want to say maybe it was my last year of high school. It was a Gravity Games, and I can't remember what year it was, but I got second place, and I won like, I don't know, 8 to 10 grand, let's say. And that was a big deal for us. Or for me, for my family. My family was like, whoa, like, you made some money. That's pretty cool. And eventually, X Games at one time was, or still is, really hard to get an invite to. And my first X Games, I went for half pipe and did horrible in half pipe and ended up getting an alternate spot for slopestyle and ended up getting 5th or 6th place, I think.
You're right. Your first.
And that
I actually have the research in front of me. 15th place in super pipe your first year.
Okay.
Sixth place slopestyle.
Yep.
Whoa.
Yep. I think the first, however many years that I did X Games before I won, I think that was the first time I ever made it to finals was the year I won.
Correct.
Every year other than that, I did not make it past qualifying.
Yeah, that was a magical year, 2014. And that's cool.
2014.
And that was actually, I remember that was actually my first year doing X Games. So that was pretty cool to have you win that gold medal.
Nice.
And you did it your way. And
yeah.
But I'm, it's funny as we get to that point, because again, we talk about you being very innovative in the pipe and just riding it differently and not feeling like you've got to spin to win. But as you said before, you kind of were on a little bit of a different program or a different route because that's sort of all you knew, right? When you think about, you were the first rider to land 3 double corks in a contest run, which beat Shaun White, I believe, in 2010. So it's almost like looking back, like, that you were part of that regime of like, how do we progress the sport and take these tricks to the next level? When did you sort of switch gears and just say, this isn't something, I don't want to do it like this, and I want to do it this way? When did that transpire for you?
I would say, so Kevin Pierce was sort of like my best friend / idol. Him and Mason and Scotty Lago and Jack and Luke, they were all my best friends but favorite riders. And Kev was sort of the leader of the pack on, let's push the sport and let's start learning some tricks that really go beyond what people are doing. And he was the first person that I knew that introduced airbags. And, Shaun White was using foam pits. And Kev found these airbags, and he was like, hey, we're going to get an airbag, and the pipe's just going to end. and there'd be an airbag, and we can just learn tricks and throw whatever we want into it. And that's when the double corks really started to come into play, at least in the half pipe world and in the slopestyle world pretty much that year. So we started flipping and spinning and learning all these new tricks. And Luke was learning switch double Michael Chucks in like 2009. And Kev was learning double McTwists. And we were pushing it. We were really starting to like change what was possible in the half pipe. And then Kev had his crash in 2010.
Sure.
And he got a TBI doing these tricks that we all were doing, that we all could do. Kev could do that trick. He just had like a slip up. And, when he took that slam, I looked at snowboarding and I was like, geez, like my best friend just, at the moment, the day it happened, I was like, wasn't sure if he was alive or dead or gonna live or what the deal was. And I was like, why would snowboarding do this to my friend? And why are we doing this? Why are we pushing it so hard? And I was pretty frustrated with snowboarding then. And I didn't really understand what should be my angle here. Do I continue doing this? Do I continue to push my limits and the limits of snowboarding altogether? Or do we start to like try and bring the sport a little bit back towards tricks that are slower spinning, a little bit more beautiful, and not just so hang on, flip, and spin until you can land your board? And that was the time, 2010, 2011-ish was when I was like, I need to start looking at this sport a little bit differently so that I can survive, maybe, because this sport is dangerous, and I don't really want to do all these flips and spins, but I will do the ones I want to do, but I also want to do some tricks that are fun and that are mellow and look really good.
Oh, there's no shortage of that with a Danny Davis run, that's for sure. So it's cool because I think during that period of time, as you said, it's unfortunate with KP's injury that maybe that jump started all of this. But you look at the genesis of, that group, the friends group, right? Friends Without the I, and then you and Jack launching the Friendly Gathering, and then of course eventually Peace Park coming into the fray. It seems like all of that sort of was a precursor to all of these great things that have become really a legacy of you and your friends.
Heck yeah. And I mean, there was so many people a part of that, Mickle Bang and Eric Jackson, and we had this massive crew. And everybody was really good snowboarders, so it was a time that will never be here again. It was this like this time in my life where everything was all about pushing the sport, and some of our friends were getting hurt, but then they were getting better, and what made them happy was snowboarding. And that's when I learned, like, okay, I just want to snowboard forever. Like seeing the smile on Kev's face the day he could snowboard again after his head injury, that was like, okay, I want to snowboard forever, and I want to make sure I'm healthy enough to do that. So I'm going to start looking at the sport in just a little bit different way and starting it to work for me and not me working for the sport.
Wow. Well, it's neat, man, to hear you say that, because I think you've maybe started as an outlier, but have really, I think, transformed pipe contests now, where it's really cool to see so many different dynamics in play with this current field, right? Where you have guys like Scotty James or Ayumu Hirano who are really pushing the limits of technical snowboarding and a half pipe, but yet it's so neat to still see you doing it completely differently. guys like Ben Ferguson as well. And it's just amazing to see all these different styles kind of converge, especially on that pipe in Aspen every year. And, you know, it's just, it doesn't matter what your preference is for snowboarding. You're just seeing world-class riding across the board.
Yeah, I mean, the sport, you know, where it was in 2010 and where it's gone. If you asked me in 2010 if I thought Scotty James was going to be doing a switch double backside 12, I'd say maybe that the sport couldn't go there. But
Right.
you got Mark McMorris doing every triple cork, every way you can spin. And, you know, it's just gotten crazy, man. Like, you know, you look at Chase Josie's run and it's like switch double crippler, switch double Michael Chuck. Like these guys continue to push the limit, and I'm trying to keep up and also just add some style where we can and try to bring it back to where the pioneers of snowboarding started, which was taking skateboarding tricks and tricks that we could do that people were doing in surfing or whatever, and putting them into snowboarding and making the sport look good.
Well, Danny, we really appreciate the time. I wish I had another 2 hours to talk to you because there's so much I'd love to cover with you, man. It's just good to catch up, but I know you're like, yo, I just want to go ride. Hey, before I let you go, though, we want to do this on every show, is just a quick social check-in. I know I get the occasional DM, but it's more like fact-driven on like either Twitter or Instagram, like, hey, when is this year's X Games? Or, hey, you called that trick wrong. I'm always curious with guys like you or Mark McMorris who probably get hit up direct messages constantly. I mean, do you get some of the wildest DMs? Like, who hits you up directly?
Yeah, I definitely hear from everybody, good and bad. I was just telling a story the other day that there's this one guy on social media who must be a snowboard extraordinaire, but he doesn't like how I grab like method above the binding, and he really thinks that method should be grabbed between the bindings. And he, every time I post a method, is just like, dude, grab between the bindings. Jamie Lynn method's where it's at. Da da da. You know, like you have that from then a high school kid who's like, hey, I got a class project and I want to interview you. So you hear it all on social media, and it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Okay, that's good. I wanted to make sure you were getting some coaching tips as well as some high school class reports. All right, man. Hey, well, you've been such a great guest, and we really appreciate the time, man. And I can't wait to catch up with you in a few weeks.
Heck yeah, man. See you at X Games.
Have a great one, buddy.
Thank you.